An entitled cunt is entitled to talk about entitlement. Here we go.
Hello everyone and welcome to Fistful of Feminism. My name is Monica.
Welcome to the Jerkin of Gherkin. This is GHERKINKIN.
And today I'd like to talk about entitlement. Entitlement is the fact to having a right to something, or belief that one is inherently deserving of privileges or special treatment.
Okay, for the sake of simplicity, just ignore the whole privileges, special treatment side of entitlement, because that really isn't discussed at all. For the context of this video, think of entitlement as interchangeable with rights, as in if someone's entitled to do something then they have the right to do something. Of course there are actually situations where some people are entitled to some things that other people are not, but they're not really going to be discussed here. I just really needed to get that out of the way.
Now there are certain things that every single person is entitled to, basic human rights being the most obvious.
Of course that is fucking obvious, but later in this video you actually dismiss people's human rights and then claim that people are not entitled to them.
But let it be decreed, as it has been said over and over and over again throughout time and space, no person is entitled to anyone else's body without their permission.
No shit, that's why we label it as assault.
Yes, that means people in relationships. Yes, that means even if you've been on 1,000 dates. Yes, that means regardless of your gender, gender identity, sexual orientation, gender expression, it means that no one is entitled to anyone else. Ever, at all, no.
No shit, but does anyone actually think those things change anything?
Now, if you need a refresher on what consent or what rape culture is, I have 2 older videos that you can check out right here.
No thanks, I am already well aware of what those things are. Rape culture is non-existent and consent is permission to fuck.
But all in all, this concept seems pretty simple, right?
Yeah, I don't really see it as that complicated. People are entitled to their rights, and their rights don't include assaulting people.
But it isn't. The Isla Vista killings of 2014 are proof of this.
No, not really. One person failing to take part in something that is simple does not mean that that simple thing is actually complicated.
Now what I really don't like is when the media blows up people's names and that is the only thing we ever talk about. But for the sake of everyone remembering this case, I will use the name here. Many people here are probably familiar with the name Elliot Rogers. This is a 22-year-old man who went on a killing spree of women, particularly young, blonde, attractive women, and sexually active men. He said in his YouTube video that he released before this brutal killing, he was saying that he wanted to punish women for rejecting him and to punish sexually active men who were having a more enjoyable life than he was. So basically, this guy felt so entitled to other people's bodies and the fact that he had an inherent right to have sex with whoever he wanted, all of that was enough to validate this young man to go on this killing spree and eventually commit suicide.
And these are clearly the actions of one awfully disturbed individual.
This is one example of how sexual entitlement is extremely pervasive in both Western culture and in lots of different cultures around the world.
So you are taking the actions of what is clearly one disturbed individual and using it to try to claim that the views of that one deviant person are pervasive throughout society. That's just fucking retarded.
So I will say it again, no one has an inherent right to sleep with.
That is correct.
To talk to.
That is incorrect. People have the right to free expression.
To do whatever they want with someone else's body or person. No one has that inherent right, because it's not a right.
Unless what they want to do is within their rights to do so.
Inherent right is for everyone to choose what they want to do with their own bodies and to have bodily autonomy.
I wish that you were correct here, except men do not have bodily autonomy, because, well, circumcision.
I bring this up today because I felt myself being really frustrated lately with all of the entitlement that I've seen around in my community, with people I know, with my friends. And the thing is that I don't think most of us realize the behavior that we might be exhibiting does contribute to entitlement or sexual entitlement.
But is it really everyone's behaviours that is classified as entitlement? Or is it just you?
So today I just wanted to deconstruct a couple of common phrases and a couple of common actions that we see almost every day and how these feed into the idea of entitlement.
And I am going to question your method of doing so.
Number 1, they cheated on me. Okay, so a lot of us have been there, a lot of us have been cheated on. It really sucks.
Well, no shit, it's the relationship equivalent of being scammed.
It really hurts your feelings.
Well, it could lead to psychological damage for some.
When someone breaks a promise or breaks a vow, whatever that might be. But we're looking at cheating through a lens of who's entitled to what.
Okay, and each person is deserving of the entitlement of not being severely lied to by their partner.
Because I'm dating someone, that automatically means that I have a right to their body.
No, it means you have the right to decide the terms of the relationship, and the right to terminate such relationship whether or not those terms are violated.
So if they do anything with their body that anyone deems inappropriate for someone who is in a monogamous relationship,
then you have every right to confront them regarding such a matter.
Then somehow we feel that we're entitled to either say something or think that our rights have been trampled on.
You have the right to say or think whatever you want, you moron.
Now, let's be clear. It really sucks to be cheated on.
Yes, you have already established that.
But the thing that I didn't realize when I was younger and I was cheated on, that it wasn't my right to dictate what someone else did with their body.
Well, of course not. That would require you to travel back in time.
Even though it might result in me being hurt, even though it might result in us not being together anymore, which is totally my choice, it still doesn't mean that I get to have control over that person's body.
That is correct, but does anyone actually believe they have the ability to that degree of control?
Now, this is something I've had to work through for many years, having to let go of the notion that I somehow have control of someone else's body.
Well, I've never had that notion, so this is clearly your problem.
The only thing that I control is what I want to do with my body, my choices, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah, it's kinda obvious that you can't make someone else's choices for them.
I totally got friend-zoned.
That retarded statement made by some people is basically the equivalent of someone complaining that they haven't won the lottery. Because of how pathetic it is, it actually turned into a meme.
Out of everything, this is probably something that most of all of you have heard before.
That's because to many people it is a joke and not to be taken seriously in any way, shape or form.
When you say that someone has put you in the friend zone, you're actually implying is that you were entitled to sleep with them.
No, not really, it's just frustration as a result of rejection, which with that alone there really isn't anything wrong with that at all.
And your expression of anger or frustration, that's actually showing that you don't respect that person enough to respect that they're saying no.
It's not the person they're disrespecting, it is the circumstances. Again, if someone loses the lottery, they don't blame the actual person running the lottery, they blame the circumstances. Even if you can find some examples of where what you have said actually does occur, they still wouldn't be reflective of society as a whole.
There's nothing wrong with someone not wanting to sleep with you.
Someone complaining about themselves being in some friend zone isn't necessarily them complaining about themselves not being fucked.
There's nothing wrong with someone who maybe wants to be friends.
And there's nothing wrong with someone wanting a little more than what they already have.
Using a word like the friend zone is actually perpetuating rape culture.
No, it's not. That doesn't exist. Also, someone expressing disappointment over the fact that they're not fucking someone is not implying that anyone is obligated to be fucking them.
Is implying that there is a binary, that you can either be sleeping with someone and dating someone, whatever that means to you, or they're your friend. There's nothing else in between.
Well, what is there in between? Oh, that's right, nothing.
But what about asexual people or aromantic people or many other types of identities where neither of those on the spectrum might be a thing?
Wait, what? So some people cannot form sexual relationships out of their sexual preferences. Therefore, no one else should be forming such relationships, apparently.
To use this term might feel pretty innocent.
Well, it's certainly not a crime. It's not really inflicting harm onto anyone.
Yes, there are lots of people who use it with different intentions.
Most intentions I've seen is using that term as a joke.
But the fact of the matter is that this statement actually upholds sexual entitlement.
No, it doesn't. And complaining about not winning the lottery doesn't mean you feel entitled to be winning the lottery.
We should be working towards being okay hearing the words no.
People don't like rejection. Rejection is a hard thing to endure. Deal with it.
Again, this sort of ties into my consent video, but what I really want to get across here is that it's a very common phrase that we hear all of the time, but we really need to be deconstructing it because it actually does uphold rape culture.
No, it doesn't.
Street harassment.
I just seem to be finding that nice legs thing at the bottom just plain fucking hilarious.
So, a lot of you have probably seen street harassment, heard street harassment, experienced street harassment. It's just not good all the way around.
I'm not sure if you were talking about people harassing streets or streets harassing people, but either way, it's unacceptable.
And one of the biggest defenses of street harassment is that it's a compliment.
Oh, so it is catcalling you were talking about. Also, catcalling is not harassment. For something to qualify as harassment, the behaviours need to be persistent, as harassment is, characteristically repetitive.
Oh, no, it's not a compliment.
Well, it can be. Whether or not catcalling is a compliment is entirely down to subjective interpretation. You cannot speak for everyone when you say it isn't a compliment. However, a person can speak for themselves when saying that what they have said was intended to be a compliment.
Street harassment is another form of sexual entitlement.
Firstly, it's not harassment. Secondly, if someone's expression isn't hate speech or actual harassment, then they have the right to that form of speech.
You harass someone on the streets,
It's not harassment.
you are showing that you are entitled to say whatever you want about their body, about their looks, about the fact that you want to sleep with them. You're saying that you are entitled enough to say whatever you want.
Well, it is my right to do so, since it is a form of free and legitimate expression.
And if they say no to that, well then they're being rude or a bitch or whatever.
I think you are strawmanning here, unless you actually do act like a rude bitch, which, if you do so, I wouldn't be too surprised.
Street harassment, for me, is one of the most frustrating places that I see entitlement at work. I once walked down a street where I got catcalled like 3 different times by 3 different people.
Categorically speaking, getting catcalled 3 different times by 3 different people is not harassment.
And the fact that they think they're entitled to express something about my body or about my appearance that will make me feel uncomfortable is extremely upsetting.
But people do have the right to such expression, regardless of how it makes you feel. Because freedom of speech includes speech that you might not like. Deal with it.
And not to mention that street harassment is felt differently by different walks of life and different people. The street harassment that I face is going to be very, very different than the street harassment that people of color or trans women of color or queer people, lots of different identities, they face very severe and very different forms of street harassment.
Except that it might not even be harassment. But sure, this non-harassment is more severe towards people of colour, because identity politics oppression Olympics.
Another action that holds up sexual entitlement is body shaming. Now, body shaming looks and sounds like a lot of different things.
Oh no, look out, it is words.
And body shaming is ultimately linked to body policing. Now, body policing is again another form of entitlement where someone thinks that they have the inherent right to police someone's body, to tell someone what they should be doing with their body and when and how and all of that stuff.
But someone telling others what they think others should do is still an entirely legitimate form of expression. Your whole idea of people shouldn't say words is just fucking stupid.
Body policing is one thing that really, really frustrates me to no end. I have experienced so much body policing in the last, past couple months, Just people questioning what I'm doing, where I am.
Oh no, asking questions? How dare they? How dare anyone use a legitimate form of speech to communicate?
It's just one of those things that it's like, hey, if it's not your body, it's not really any of your business, so just like, don't. The only person who is entitled to know what I'm doing with my body or where I choose to be is me.
But anyone is allowed to ask questions regarding such matters. You may not have to answer those questions, but they are still allowed to ask those questions.
Now, I am almost positive that everyone has heard the sentence, well, I'm entitled to my own opinion. Maybe entitled is not the word.
Okay then, I have the right to my own opinion. Again, as I've said earlier, right and entitlement are basically interchangeable, in this context at least.
You have every right to have an opinion about what's going on with you, about how you personally feel about things, but you don't have an inherent right to have an opinion about someone else.
No, I have the right to have an opinion on whatever the fuck I want to have an opinion on. You are not the Fort Police.
So, if I go to an abortion clinic and I get an abortion, you don't have a right to have an opinion on what I do.
Fucking wow, you are actually that fucking stupid. I can form an opinion on whatever I want to form an opinion on. Me thinking about something you don't want me to think about does not violate anything.
Because it's not your body and you're not entitled to my body.
I think there is something you are misunderstanding. I am not physically entitled to your body. However, thinking and forming opinions, and expressing those opinions, are not physical actions. Me having an opinion on you is not a threat to you in any way, shape or form. And no one has the right to not be criticised, regardless of how they feel of such criticism, because such criticism is a form of legitimate expression.
A lot of entitlement also is connected to colonialism. So that means colonial practices that are happening today, which yes, colonialism is ongoing and is still happening, especially in Canada, then that is an entire system of entitlement.
So you're not even going to provide a single example on how this is ongoing entitlement. You're just going to say they're white, so they must feel entitled.
So not only is there sexual entitlement, male entitlement, there's also white entitlement at play here.
Fucking wow, you just proved my point. You haven't provided a single example of the supposed white male entitlement. You just assert that it exists.
I'm really hoping people will just try and catch themselves a little bit more when it comes to entitlement. To catch yourself when you say something and asking yourself, hey, why do I think I'm entitled to this?
And then after asking myself that question, I come to the conclusion, oh that's right, because expression is within my legal rights.
It can be really, really hard to work through some of these things, especially when we're conditioned to think that we're just entitled to everything.
Firstly, citation needed. Provide actual evidence of this conditioning. Secondly, who actually thinks they are entitled to everything? And if you do manage to find someone in particular who does actually live under such a twisted delusion, why do they think like that?
I really just wanted to get across the message that no one is entitled to anyone else's body.
Again, I have to correct you. No one is physically entitled to anyone else's body. I usually wouldn't have to say that, but you are actually with the belief that people aren't allowed to express opinions.
We all need to learn how to respect the word no, and to be okay with being rejected or someone saying no to us, because it's okay.
You honestly sound like someone who has never dealt with rejection ever because of your complete lack of understanding towards how hard it is for people to deal with rejection.
It's been really hard for me to speak out about this because not a lot of people are educated in what entitlement means.
Because not enough people are educated, says the person who doesn't even know that people have the right to free expression. Says the person who doesn't even know that people have the right to form an opinion on whatever the fuck they want to form an opinion on. So by not a lot of people are educated, you really mean not a lot of people are indoctrinated.
So So when I bring it up or confront it or question it, I often get people laughing in my face.
Well, if you say something that's stupid, of course you're going to get people laughing in your presence.
Sorry that the lighting is not great and that the positioning is not great.
I don't really have an issue with your lighting or positioning at all. I don't really care about those, to be honest. What I find idiotic is what you are saying.